Morning, fantastic third graders. Well, we are moving into weapons and armor of the Roman Empire, and I'm sure this is what a lot of you have been waiting for. Well, I will tell you it's going to take a couple of days because there's so much to talk about, as with anything in Rome. So much to talk about. And I don't want to spend 45 minutes on a video. So we're going to break it up into a couple different pieces. Today, we're going to talk about the military of Rome and its defensive tactics, as well as armor and what did the soldiers wear and use. And then we will move on to the individual weapons as well, and siege weapons, the big weapons, later on as well. But today, we're sticking with armor and military tactics. So let's get started. The Roman military, if you remember, if we kind of rewind it all back a little bit, the Roman military began using the Phalanx. Now, you know you've seen that picture before. The Phalanx, which was what many other countries or nations or tribes did at the time, especially the Greek. This is what they used, and this is how they originally started working with their military, to train their military soldiers how to do this formation and how to do it well. So this is way back in the time of the Etruscan kings, way back before Rome had a senate and consuls. This is how they battled. Now, I'm going to show you what it looks like and how completely awkward it is to use. So, on that note, we're going to go to the video. All right, so here we go. The Phalanx is now set up, and if you were trying to go and attack with a regular spear or a hoplite spear, which we will talk about when we do individual weapons, you're not going to get anywhere. Now, moving the Phalanx looks like it takes a lot of effort. Think about how long those spears are compared to everyone else. If you want to do a countermarch and turn around, you have to move everyone from the back all the way up to the front and then turn around. Turning took some great difficulty, and it was also a struggle to keep everyone together. And remember, these are just poles that they're using, and they're very flimsy poles. Imagine you have a giant wooden stick with a spear on the end of it, and you're lowering it down and trying not to stab the people in front of you. It's a challenge. Also, what's a challenge is trying to keep everyone together. See how they're already getting spread out? It took hours and hours of practice and time and patience and lots of listening skills. Now, if you wanted to turn around and go the other way, well, you've got to send the people who are in the front, they stay there. All the people in the back have to go all the way up to the front. You have to completely switch around your entire position just like that. Then you turn around, and then you can officially about face. So it takes a long time. So it takes a long time to make this work. Therefore, the Romans needed something better, something faster, and more efficient. During the Second and Third Punic Wars, hey, there's our guy, Scipio, and he has figured out that changes need to be made in order for the Romans to be a successful military. In order for Rome to defeat its enemies, they needed to make some big changes. And with all the people that had died after the First Punic War, enlistment needed to change as well, and more people needed to show up. So, some military requirements for the Roman army. One, you must be 20 years old. Now that changed. And although it says you need to be 20, that's pretty flexible. That's a flexible number. By the time of the Third Punic War, there were 15 and 16-year-olds signing up for the Roman army. So, although it started as 20, didn't last. You're also not allowed to marry during your time of service. That initial time of service, you cannot have a girlfriend, you cannot be married. Oh, and yes, the military was just for the men. So the ladies were not participating. Enlistment. Your initial enlistment lasted about 6 years, but you could continue to sign up and sign up and sign up all the way for the next 25 years. You could be a freeman, you could be slaves, you could be rich, you could be poor. Any male could sign up for the army. Military camps were set up permanently instead of just traveling camps. The military, the groups, if you were in a legion, if you were in a group, your first task would be to build your own military camp with rocks and bricks and lots of digging and lots of building. That would be your first task as a group. Your training camp would be setting up your camp. Also along that line, your training camp would also be building roads to and from your camp. So they didn't have anything. You're going to be sleeping under tents otherwise. So your first task, build a permanent settlement. There was also a military treasury set up in order to pay for supplies and pay for soldiers' pensions. What a pension is after you retired from the military, if you had been in for a certain amount of years, you would continue getting a paycheck after you retired. If you served honorably and you served with respect and you put in all of your time and you didn't have any problems and no one had any problems with you, you would receive a pension, which meant you could be retired and be getting money for the rest of your life, which was great, except, I mean, you had to go through pretty awful things in the Roman military. So if you survived all that, it was definitely worth the pension. Soldiers were called legionnaires. So you weren't a soldier, you were a legionnaire. Legionnaires were members of a legion, and a legion was made up of about 5,000 men. There were 30 legions around Rome at the height of its power. So doing some math, 30 times 5,000. Any of my math people out there figure that out? That is about 150,000 men. Not a million, 150,000. Not bad. Not bad. To have control of an entire empire and only have about 150,000 men, that's pretty good. Each legion had its own number, name, badge, fortress, and its own design. Some of their shields had different designs as well. They were named after animals, named after emperors, named after famous other consuls of Rome, locations, places, trees, lots of different fantastic Roman names. All right, so sections of a legion. Before we jump into that, first of all, as a Roman legionnaire, wherever you would travel, you'd typically be on foot, and wherever you would travel, you would be responsible for carrying your own things. You might travel up to 20 miles a day by the road. You'd be carrying all the armor that you were wearing, all of your weapons, your shield, and any supplies that your contubernium would require. Now, your contubernium was 8 men. So you were part of this giant legion of 5,000. And then you'd get split up into smaller sections. The contubernium, that was your group of 8. Your group of 8 men were responsible for carrying one tent. Your sleeping pads, your tent, and all of your supplies for the 8 of you. which means between the 8 of you, you would need to split up who was carrying the tent poles and the string or the rope and the tent itself, and who was carrying the sleeping pads and any other supplies. You are all responsible for your stuff. So now take a look at that tent. 8 people were expected to sleep in that size of a tent. Yeah. Seems kind of small. All right. So 8 men were in a contubernium. Then you'd put 10 contuberniums together to form a centuria. Centuria was made out of 80 men. When you put 6 centurias together, you would get a cohort. So lots of cohorts would go off into different places and get assigned different tasks. The reason they're split up into all these strange numbers is, as a group of 8, that's kind of those are your bunk mates in a way. Those are the guys that you get to hang out with and work with. Then there's a general overseeing a centuria, which is 10 groups of the contubernium. And there's another higher general up overseeing a cohort, which is 6 centurias or 480 men. Basically, it's easier ways of splitting up the 5,000 people, because you don't want one general in charge of 5,000 people. Nothing would ever get done. So it's split up so that there are other people in charge of smaller groups to make communication a lot more efficient. So a cohort, 480 men. A legion had 5,000 men, which was about 10 cohorts. And then you had the Equus Legion, which was 120 cavalry. Cavalry were the men who got to ride the horses. So a visual of a Roman legion: you have your contubernium, which is your 8 men. Then your centuria, which is 10 of those contuberniums. A cohort is 6 centurias. And a legion is 10 cohorts. Just to give you an idea of the size of the Roman legion. So, you're an army. Now what? Well, you need something to wear. Yep, gotta have something to wear. You need things to wear so that you are protected from battles and whatnot. So how are you going to protect the soldiers? Well, first of all, you are going to be, as a Roman government, you are going to be arming thousands and thousands and thousands of men. That's going to take a lot of money. So, well, what are you going to do? You're going to find the most cost-efficient way to do it, which means you're going to take shortcuts and you're going to look for the cheapest way to arm your crew. I know, right? So, do your arms need to be covered? Nah. Do your legs need to be covered? Nah. Just keep the vitals. We'll keep the vitals covered. You've got, something to cover your neck. You've got, chest protection. That's about all you need, right? Just cover the vitals. Make sure, you got a shield to cover the rest of the parts that don't have armor. You got a helmet. That's good. That's good. That's all you need. Lots of shortcuts were taken in the armor that was made for the Roman military. Now, of course, as you stayed in the military longer and had more money, you were able to afford nicer things for yourself. As you moved up in the ranks, obviously you would have more armor for yourself because, well, the higher up you went, the more knowledge you had, and therefore you were more important to the military. So you needed to stick around and not just be a random foot soldier who was going to be on the front lines, getting a spear at their face. So you needed to protect yourself a lot more. But very cost efficient, lots of shortcuts were taken, and it wasn't the best armor, but it did its job. So let's find out about it. First, you have the focale, the scarf around the neck. Now that was your neck protection. Yep, a scarf. Now, your helmet would hopefully cover a little bit of your neck as well, but you had a neck. You had a focale, you had a scarf for your neck protection. So, yeah, I'm sure you're feeling really confident right now. You had a balteas or a baltea, which was your belt right in here. That held up these protective straps, the baltea, the dangly straps. They were protective of that area. That was not just for show, but that was all the protection you had in that area. So you definitely wanted to make sure that shield also was, held up in front of you to protect your entire front. Then you also had the caligay. Those were your sandals, your fantastic army sandals. They had spikes at the bottom, much like if you're in soccer or if you're in football and you had the spikes at the bottom to grip the ground. The Roman sandals had those as well, except yet they were sandals. Bare legs. Sandals. And that's what you'd march 20 miles in. Oh, going too fast. All right. Now you have what the most important part is your Lorica segmentada, which is your armor. It is a scaled metal and it fits over your chest and shoulders, but leaves your arm free for fighting. So there's no protection underneath your arm. So if you lift your arm way up to fight and swing at someone, you're exposing this whole area here. So when you fight very close range. You keep your arms in at your sides for fighting. The Lorica segmentada had it would be layered. It was layered on top of another on top of another. So it wasn't just right on top, but there was some, much like when we talked about with the Viking ships, the wood layered over the wood to make the Viking ships flexible. Same thing here. Scaled metal layered on top of each other, fits over chest, that allows you some flexibility in movement. Although very thin metal, but hey, it's still metal and it's still protection. So some people chose to wear greaves, which is the shin protection, typically worn over your one leg, which is your left leg. Why your left leg, you say? Well, if you're swinging a sword with your right hand, your shield is in your left hand, which means the leg that is exposed, standing right by your shield, is also your left leg. Your right leg is hiding behind you, which is easier to do when I'm standing and it's hard to see. But anyway, maybe you would wear that if you had enough money to purchase one. Then you have your galea or your cassis, which is fancy word for helmet. There are different helmets depending on your rank in the army. This, very basic. This, obviously, commander, general. Now, it's time to get defensive. You need a shield for defense, and actually, shields could be used for offense as well. The most popular Roman shield, the one we know most about, is the scutum. It is Latin. It's the Latin word for shield. It began as a rectangular shield during the time of the Punic Wars. Rectangular scutums were used for the Testudo formation. The Testudo formation is the one formation that beat the Phalanx. They started using the Testudo formation around the Third Punic War, and it was so much better than the Phalanx. It was used ever since. Scipio thought that the best defense was a good offense, and proved it with the Testudo formation, which we will see very shortly. In the center, the metal boss or center boss called the umbo was used for punching people. Oh, yes, yes, it was. The shield itself was made of wood with metal edging. It was light enough to carry in one arm, and it kept its owner protected. See how he's crouching down? You have very little to aim at. That's why it was created. It became more oval shaped after years of growth with the empires. The empire grew and gained more territory, more customs started to come into play, and more people's ideas of how the military should be formed came into play, and obviously designs changed. But the most famous and the one most widely used for the longest period of time is the rectangular scutum. So, you want to see the Testudo in action? I want to see the Testudo in action. So, throughout the world, there are people who do reenactments of different wars and battles fought by the different ancient peoples of the world, including the Romans. I'm probably sure I've told you this before, but my husband and I are in the SCA, which is a medieval form of reenacting crew. It's kind of like Civil War reenacting, except medieval times. And there are crews of people who do Roman reenactments as well. So we are going to take a look at a group of Germans who are doing a reenactment of a crew that is utilizing the Testudo formation. Take a look at how they form it, how they walk, how it looks like a small army tank. Yeah, pretty much nothing is getting through this formation, and this formation allowed Rome to really just bulldoze over anyone that they were fighting and get in behind enemy lines without being hurt. So, without further ado, the Testudo formation. So right now they're just marching in, carrying all their equipment. Different levels of the military are wearing different things. So you can see some of the men only have chainmail. Some of the men have chainmail, and some of them have the Lorica segmentata. Some have the oval shields with an archer in the back, and they're all marching together as well. So now they're forming the Testudo formation. Testudo in Latin means turtle. So, turtle in sign language, Testudo in Latin. This is the turtle formation. The Testudo formation allowed the Romans to attack from any angle, to prevent from being attacked. It's really hard to take down someone in the Testudo formation. It's like a mini army tank. Easy to take down, easy to put up. We'll go into the fighting skills a little bit later. But on that note, that is all we have for the introduction of military skills, armor, and the Testudo and formation and military tactics. We will cover weapons and siege weapons later on. Bye!